The Glorban Empire prided itself on efficiency. Not just any efficiency, the kind of ruthless, clinical efficiency that had allowed them to conquer 17 star systems in less than a standard galactic cycle. Their invasion protocols were legendary. Their battle formations were taught in military academies across 3 galaxies, and their paperwork was absolutely impeccable. Supreme Commander Zorpia stood on the bridge of the flagship, unyielding will, her 4 arms crossed in what her species considered a posture of absolute confidence. Her exoskeleton gleamed under the ship's lights, polished to regulation standards as always. She studied the holographic projection of their next target, Planet 734 Alpha. The scans indicate vast green areas, reported her chief intelligence officer. Primitive structures arranged in simplistic geometric patterns. Energy emissions are weak and scattered, suggesting rudimentary technology at best. Zorpia nodded, her compound eyes reflecting the blue glow of the planet. Resistance? Minimal, if any. The biological scans suggest basic carbon-based life forms. Nothing our standard protocols can't handle. A junior officer hesitantly raised a tentacle. Supreme Commander, there is a small notation about unexplained chaotic energy spikes and extremely complex but discrete radio wave interference. Zorpia dismissed this with a flick of her secondary appendage. Sensor malfunction or insignificant geological activity. Has the pre-invasion assessment been completed according to Form 7B 59? Yes, Supreme Commander. Though there is one peculiarity. Some old records refer to this planet as Earth, but we believe it's either a translation error or a primitive local designation of no importance. Earth? Zorpia repeated, the word feeling oddly flat in her mouth. What kind of name is that for a conquest? No matter. Prepare the dropships. Standard formation. And someone turn off that software update notification sound. It's interrupting the glory march again. As the invasion fleet approached the planet, Glorban soldiers prepared themselves in the time-honored tradition of their people, double-checking equipment lists, rehearsing their intimidation stances, and arguing about which planet had the best food during their last conquest. Alpha Team will target this residential area with simple geometric structures, Zorpia instructed, indicating a suburban area on the map. Beta Team will secure this dense energy and information hub, she continued, highlighting a major city that appeared to be London. Remember, we want control of their communications and infrastructure. Clean, efficient by the book. The dropships launched with military precision. As they descended through the atmosphere, Squad Leader Clib of Alpha Team addressed his troops. Remember your training. These primitives will either cower in fear or attempt feeble resistance. Either way, maintain formation, and his speech was cut short as their ship touched down with a soft thud. Defensive positions. Now, the Glorban soldiers poured out of their ship, weapons at the ready, only to find themselves in the middle of what appeared to be some kind of ritual combat training. Small creatures, clearly the planet's young, ran in chaotic patterns across a green field, wearing brightly colored uniforms. Larger creatures, presumably the adults, stood at the edges, emitting high-pitched sounds that the translator struggled to process. "Hail, primitive beings," Clib announced through his universal translator. "Your planet is now under the control of the glorious Glorban Empire." The creatures stared blankly at him. One of them, holding a container of some kind, approached. "Cool costumes. Are you guys promoting that new sci-fi movie? Want to buy some lemonade? It's for the team fundraiser." Meanwhile, Beta Team had touched down in the center of the major metropolis. Commander Vrex had expected panic, screaming, perhaps some primitive weapons fire. Instead, their massive warship had caused a traffic jam. Pedestrians were pointing devices at them. Weapons? No, they appear to be recording the invasion. Nearby, enormous digital billboards continued to flash advertisements, several of which now illuminated the hull of their ship with images of smiling humans advertising dental products. A small ground vehicle with flashing lights approached. A human in a uniform emerged, looking distinctly unimpressed. "You can't park that here," the human said, gesturing to their warship. "This is a no-standing zone. I'm going to have to ask you to move your vehicle." Back on the flagship, Zorpia received the first reports with increasing confusion. "What do you mean they offered you a juice box? And what is a viral marketing stunt?" The Glurban Empire's meticulous invasion plan was beginning to unravel in ways no one had anticipated. The Glurban hackers, elite units trained to infiltrate and control planetary information networks, were having an unexpectedly difficult time. They had successfully breached what appeared to be a global information system, only to be confronted with an endless series of obstacles. "Supreme Commander," reported Chief Hacker Zilb, "we've encountered unexpected resistance. Their networks require authentication involving knowledge of maternal ancestral nomenclature, agreement to lengthy service terms documents, and automated response systems that redirect us between non-responsive customer support departments." Zorpia's exoskeleton clicked in irritation. "Explain." "They keep asking for something called a mother's maiden name and requiring us to check boxes confirming we've read documents longer than our entire military code. And when we try to speak directly to their leaders, mechanical voices tell us our call is important to them while playing repetitive music. Meanwhile, ground forces attempting to seize government buildings were meeting equally baffling resistance. At a structure identified as a center of authority, they were confronted not by guards, but by a being seated behind a desk who seemed completely unfazed by their presence. "Do you have an appointment?" the receptionist asked, barely looking up from her screen. "We are the conquering forces of the Glorban Empire. We demand to speak to your highest authority," declared Unit Commander Blorg. I don't see you in the system. You'll need to fill out these forms," she said, sliding over a stack of papers, "and provide identification, proof of address, and your social security number." "Social? What?" "We are here to claim dominion over your world." That would be the Department of Interplanetary Affairs, but they're closed for renovation. The person who handles alien invasions is on paid leave until next Tuesday. "Would you like to make an appointment for next week?" In another building, a squad of Glorban soldiers had somehow gotten lost in a maze of identical corridors and ended up joining an office fire drill, standing awkwardly in a parking lot with confused employees who assumed they were from the IT department. What had started as a straightforward invasion was rapidly becoming a bureaucratic nightmare. The Glorban troops, attempting to claim territory, were instructed to submit building permits, environmental impact assessments, and attend local council hearings. Their declaration of sovereignty was stalled by zoning regulations, tax identification requirements, and business license applications. Zorpia's aide, Subcommander Fizwidget, a small, perpetually anxious creature, compiled reports from the field with growing concern. "Supreme Commander, our standard tactics appear ineffective. The natives don't seem properly intimidated by our power demonstrations. When we flew warships over their cities, most of them ignored us completely or complained about the noise. Some thought we were new delivery drones or special effects for entertainment." "Impossible," Zorpia snapped. "Our intimidation protocols are flawless. They worked on 37 distinct species." "Also," Fizwidget added hesitantly, "I've noticed the designation Earth appearing with increasing frequency in intercepted communications, often alongside meaningless phrases like weekend sales or weather forecast." Zorpia dismissed this concern with a wave. "It's just primitive ignorance. Keep monitoring." But as days passed, the Glorban forces found themselves increasingly bewildered by human behavior. Elite cultural analysis units were deployed to study and understand the civilization they were supposedly conquering. The entertainment analysis squad reported back in a state of confusion after monitoring television broadcasts. They voluntarily watch other members of their species compete in bizarre talent rituals, observe the daily activities of strangers, and spend hours viewing small furry creatures performing minor feats of agility or making facial expressions, reported the unit leader. "We cannot determine the strategic value of these activities. Several squad members have been caught secretly following serialized narratives or playing games on portable devices instead of completing their analysis reports." The consumption habits of humans were equally baffling. They stand in extended queues to purchase new versions of electronic devices that appear only marginally different from previous versions, noted one observer. They wear garments with visible logos at increased cost, and many seem to require regular consumption of a bitter stimulant beverage derived from plant seeds. Most perplexing were the social interactions. Glorban soldiers found themselves invited to peculiar social gatherings, celebrations of birth anniversaries for non-sentient companion animals, ceremonies marking completion of the most basic educational levels, and gatherings centered around watching other humans throw or kick various objects. They were asked personal questions by complete strangers and drawn into passionate debates about matters of seemingly no consequence, such as teams of people they had never met competing in physical activities or the relative merits of different preparation methods for nutrient substances. The cultural contamination that followed was unprecedented in Glorban invasion history. An analysis unit assigned to study Earth music had accidentally formed an experimental jazz band. Their performances were technically proficient, but, as one human critic noted, lacked soul and sounded like someone threw a synthesizer into a mathematics competition. A weapons specialist had begun secretly collecting model trains after spotting them through a shop window, entranced by their miniature precision and the tiny landscapes they traversed. Most alarmingly, Glorban soldiers were adopting human slang and awkwardly attempting to mimic social gestures. One elite guard had been reprimanded for greeting Supreme Commander Zorpia with, "What's up, boss?" and attempting a high five. After extensive decoding efforts, Subcommander Fizwidget finally confirmed a troubling truth. Earth was not a translation error or primitive designation. It was the official, commonly accepted name of the planet in its own languages. The name, essentially meaning ground, soil, or world, was so ordinary, so lacking in epic quality for a conquest target of the mighty Glorban Empire. When Fizwidget reported this finding, Zorpia's exoskeleton actually changed color briefly, a sign of extreme emotion in her species. Earth? Just Earth? Not realm of the sky gods, or fortress of the seven moons, or even something moderately impressive like Deathburner Prime? Just dirt? They named their planet after dirt. Yes, Supreme Commander. And they seemed quite comfortable with this designation. Zorpia found herself more offended by this mundanity than threatened by any weapon. Find their actual leadership. Someone must be in charge of this. This baffling place. Force them to acknowledge our invasion properly. The Glorban forces launched a coordinated effort to identify and capture Earth's leaders. They targeted politicians, corporate executives, and celebrities, only to discover that power was distributed in ways they found hard to comprehend. Leaders were surrounded by impenetrable layers of scheduling conflicts, assistance, and security protocols more complex than energy shields. In one embarrassing incident, they mistakenly abducted an actor who portrayed a president in a popular television series and an influencer who specialized in reviewing fast food items. Both captives were more interested in taking selfies with their alien abductors than negotiating planetary surrender. Zorpia ordered the deployment of the Confusion Broadcaster, a psychological weapon designed to induce doubt and anxiety across wide areas. Its effects were barely noticeable amid the 24-hour news cycle, social media chaos, and the ambient stress of modern life. Some humans reported feeling slightly more concerned about their electricity bills, but otherwise continued their daily routines. When attempts to disrupt Earth's economy followed, the Glorban algorithms crashed trying to make sense of financial markets driven by emotional decisions, strange investment bubbles, and economic theories that even the most advanced Glorban mathematicians found contradictory. Meanwhile, the Glorban supply chain was experiencing unprecedented challenges. Soldiers were increasingly requesting Earth items instead of standard Glorban provisions. The logistics system, designed for military efficiency, couldn't process requests for specific shoe sizes or ice cream flavors. The quartermaster nearly had a nervous breakdown when asked to source extra chunky peanut butter and noise-canceling headphones. Morale was deteriorating rapidly. Soldiers spent more time watching streaming services, browsing the internet, or participating in local activities than than performing their duties. Reports of desertion increased, with several Glorban troops leaving to find themselves or pursue their passion for pottery. Zorpia became increasingly irritable and paranoid. She saw signs of Earthification everywhere, from Fizzwidget humming pop tunes to the ship's AI using emoticons in reports. During one particularly stressful briefing, she threw a tantrum when presented with a status report formatted as a PowerPoint presentation, with animated slide transitions. "This is unacceptable," she screeched. "We are the Glorban Empire. We conquer worlds. We don't use bullet points and clip art." The invasion didn't end with a battle or a treaty. It simply faded into the everyday chaos of Earth. The Glorban military ceased to be an occupying force and became just another large, somewhat odd, heavily armed immigrant community. Former Glorban troops began applying their skills to new endeavors. An engineering unit used plasma drills to create artistic ice sculptures that became popular at upscale events. Stealth specialists opened an extremely discreet and slightly terrifying delivery service that guaranteed, "You'll never see us coming, but your package will definitely arrive." A biological weapons scientist began working at a craft brewery, creating beer flavors so unique they defied conventional description. Their quantum uncertainty IPA was described by critics as simultaneously the best and worst beer I've ever tasted, depending on which part of my tongue it hits. Zorpia, in a final attempt to salvage the situation, or at least understand what was happening, agreed to attend a community meeting organized by local residents. She found herself sitting on a folding chair, eating cookies, and listening to complaints about garbage collection schedules and noise from her ship's engines. The meeting concluded with her reluctantly agreeing to sponsor the local youth soccer team. The unyielding will remained in orbit, but now offered weekend tours, a small food court selling interstellar specialties, mostly repackaged Earth snacks, and a gift shop selling t-shirts, model ships, and Glorban action figures. The most popular item was a plush toy of Supreme Commander Zorpia that made angry, squeaking sounds when squeezed. Fizzwidget became the unofficial liaison between the Glorban community and Earthlings, spending most of his time resolving minor cultural misunderstandings and business license issues. He started a popular social media account documenting alien adjustment adventures, which led to a book deal and talk show appearances. Zorpia stood on the bridge, now featuring a coffee machine and several potted plants, looking down at Earth. She received a message from High Command, the first in many months, demanding an urgent status report. Zorpia looked at the screen, then out the window, where a Glorban shuttle was being used to deliver pizzas. She sighed and began typing her response. Report: Mission 734 Alpha, under reassessment. Target complexity exceeds projections. Request additional time, and possibly some marketing consultants. In the interim, we are exploring the expansion of our souvenir product line. She paused, looking at the blue planet below, then added, P.S. You should visit sometime. The coffee is extraordinary. 6 months later, a Glorban Cultural Center opened in what had been their main base of operations. It featured classes in Glorban language and cuisine, an exhibit on Glorban history, heavily edited to downplay the whole conquering empire aspect, and a popular cafe. Their invasion blend coffee became a local favorite. Former Supreme Commander Zorpia, now officially cultural attaché Zorpia, wrote a best-selling memoir titled How Earth Conquered Me, a warlord journey to finding inner peace through yoga and artisanal cheese. She still maintained her intimidating demeanor, but had developed a fondness for floral print dresses and cat videos. The annual First Contact Festival became a major tourist attraction, featuring reenactments of the landing, heavily embellished for entertainment value, Glorban human fusion cuisine, and a parade led by the youth soccer team, their uniforms emblazoned with the modified Glorban Empire logo, the traditional symbol of universal conquest, now incorporating a soccer ball and a peace sign. Fizzwidget, now a respected community leader and part-time philosophy professor, often reflected on the irony of their failed invasion. In his popular lecture series, he posed the question, did we fail to conquer Earth, or did Earth succeed in conquering us? Meanwhile, in a quiet suburban home, a former Glorban elite guard, now known locally as Bob, watered his garden, waved to his neighbors, and checked his watch. He was meeting some former squad members for their weekly board game night. As he locked his front door, he glanced up at the stars visible in the evening sky. Sometimes he thought about the 17 other worlds the Glorban Empire had successfully conquered, all now presumably running with perfect efficiency, absolute order, and complete adherence to protocol. He shuddered slightly, got into his minivan, modified to accommodate his extra appendages, and headed off to argue good-naturedly about dice rolls and rule interpretations over beer and pretzels. In the grand military archives of the Glorban Empire, Mission 734 Alpha was officially classified as inconclusive, further study required. Unofficially, high-ranking officers whispered about the strange planet that defeated the mighty Glorban not with weapons or tactics, but with bureaucracy, indifference, and a culture so chaotic it defied all logical analysis. Some even suggested, very quietly, that perhaps the Glorban way wasn't the only way. This dangerous thought was quickly suppressed with mandatory efficiency, training, and extra paperwork. But each year, a few more. Glorban ships would mysteriously develop navigation errors that brought them to Earth. Their crews would report back with strange new interests, inexplicable attachments to Earth music or food, and a disturbing tendency to ask why instead of simply following orders. And on Earth, humans largely went about their business, incorporating aliens into their ever-changing, messy, wonderful civilization, just as they had incorporated so many other things throughout their history. Because if Earth excelled at anything, it was adapting, taking the strange and making it familiar, turning the fearsome into the everyday. In a kindergarten classroom a year after the invasion, a teacher asked her students to draw pictures of their community helpers. Among the typical policemen, firefighters, and doctors was a colorful drawing of a four-armed, exoskeleton-wearing figure. When asked who this was, the child replied matter-of-factly, "That's Dr. Zilb. He's our dentist. Mom says he's the best because his 4 hands make checkups super fast." And that perhaps more than anything was how Earth truly conquered the conquerors, not by fighting them, but by making them part of the everyday fabric of life. The mundane planet with a mundane name had taught the mighty Glorban Empire a lesson they never expected to learn, that sometimes the most powerful force in the universe isn't efficiency or military might, but the simple ability to adapt, to welcome, and to find humor in the absurd. And in his quiet moments, even Fizzwidget had to admit, Earth was actually a pretty good name for a planet after all.